Hello everyone and welcome to Bronze Monkey. Today we are checking out 5 interesting moments in Ottoman history which wouldn't make up a full video themselves, but I just found interesting and would like to share with you. So let's start the list at number 5. Capital punishment in the Ottoman Empire could make up an entire video by itself, but we are going to focus on a strange tradition that took place in post-17th century Ottoman Empire. The job of the executioner was held by the Sultan's Bostancı, or head gardener. The Ottoman corps of what was initially gardeners that transformed into the household's 5,000-strong palace guard. That, aside from cultivating the Sultan's paradise gardens, doubled as a customs inspectors and police officers around the neighborhoods of the palace. When very senior officials were sentenced to death, they would be dealt with by the Bostancı in person. But, at least towards the end of the Sultan's rule, execution was not the inevitable result of a death sentence. The condemned man and the Bostancı took part in what was surely one of the most peculiar customs known to history. A race held between the head gardener and his anticipated victim, the result of which was a matter of life or death for the trembling Grand Vizier or chief eunuch required to undertake it. It was the Bostancı's duty to summon any notable when the vizier or other unfortunate miscreant arrived. He well knew why he had been summoned, but he had to bite his lip through the courtesies of hospitality before, at long last, being handed a cup of sherbet. If it was white, he sighed with relief, but if it was red, he was in despair, because if it was red, that means he had to die. For most of the Bostancı's victims, the sentence was carried out immediately after serving of the fatal sherbet by a group of 5 janissaries. For a Grand Vizier, however, there was still a chance. As soon as the death sentence was passed, the condemned man would be allowed to run as fast as he was able, the 300 yards or so from the palace, through the gardens, and down to the fish market on the southern side of the palace complex, overlooking the Bosphorus, which was the appointed place of execution. If the disposed vizier reached the fish market gate before the head gardener, his sentence was commuted to mere banishment. But if the condemned man found the Bostancı waiting for him at the gate, he was executed and his body dumped into the sea. Ottoman records show that the strange custom of the fatal race lasted into the early years of the 19th century. The last man to save his neck by winning the life or death sprint was the Grand Vizier Haji Salih Pasha in November 1822. Salih, whose predecessor had lasted a mere 9 days in office before his own execution, not only survived his death sentence, but was so esteemed for winning his race that he went on to be the Governor-General of the province of Damascus. Hazarfen Ahmed was an aviator, scientist, and inventor. He was one of the first people to succeed to fly with wings he developed, and he is the first Turkish aviator in history. Between 1623 and 1640, at the time of Sultan Murat IV, he was named Hazarfen by society as he realized his flying project and due to his wide knowledge. Hazarfen Ahmed was inspired by 2 other scientists that came before him. One was Ismail Cevheri, one of the Turkish scientists who lived in the 10th century. It is also certain that Hazarfen was inspired by the machines and drawings and experiments of Leonardo da Vinci. The 17th century writings of Evliya Çelebi relate the story of Hazarfen Ahmed. It is written, first, he practiced by flying over the pulpit of Ok Meydanı 8 or 9 times with eagle wings, using the force of the wind. Then, as Sultan Murat IV's daughter was born, he decided to celebrate the occasion by flying over the Bosphorus. Sultan Murat Khan was watching from the Sinan Pasha mansion at Sarayburnu. He flew from the very top of the Galata Tower in contemporary Karaköy and landed in Doğancılar Square in Üsküdar with the help of the southwest wind. Murat IV was impressed by this for his feat with a sack of gold coins, saying, "This man is uncanny. He is capable of doing anything he wishes. It is not right to surround oneself with such people. And true to his word, he then exiled Ahmed to Algeria, where the scientist remained until his death. While modern historians disagree with Evliya Çelebi's narration of Hazarfan flying the entire Bosphorus, they state that the flight most likely was real, but heavily exaggerated, as Çelebi was often known to do in his writings. This was not the only attempt of flight during the time of Murad IV. There is another man who decided to take an impressive feat of flight. This man was Lagalı Hasan, the famous Turkish scientist who is the ancestor of missilery. He succeeded to blast off a simple air rocket with a chamber full of gunpowder at the same time as Ahmed was doing his flight. Evliya Çelebi again also reported that in 1633, Lagalı Hasan Çelebi blasted off from Sarayburnu, also to celebrate the birth of the Sultan's child, in a 7-winged rocket propelled by 63 kilos of gunpowder. The flight was said to have been undertaken with 63 kilos of gunpowder. As Evliya wrote, Lagalı Hasan proclaimed before the launching of his craft, "O my Sultan, be blessed. I am going to talk to Jesus." After ascending in his rocket, he landed in sea, swimming ashore and joking, "O my Sultan, Jesus sends his regards to you." He was rewarded by the Sultan with silver and the rank of Sipahi in the Ottoman army. However, first supported by the Sultan, but then with the pressures of the ulema, social class in the Ottoman Empire consisting of lawyers, professors, and religious functionaries, he was put on trial and exiled to Crimea, where he later died. In place of number 2, we have a very strange and sadly funny part of history in Istanbul, the eggplant flyers. It's no secret that the Turks love eggplants. There are so many ways to prepare them, all of them delicious. But the love of eggplants has a pretty serious consequence for the citizens of Istanbul in times gone by. Once, there was a repeated saying in the city, "When it is eggplant season, it is also season of fires and mad people." The correlation between the beloved vegetable and wandering lunatics and fearsome fires seems totally remote, but the key word here is the summer heat. People practically go mad with the high temperature, and sometimes they do insanely dangerous things, such as frying eggplants. It is known that the eggplant is at best fried on the char-grilled embers. In the old times, the timber houses of Istanbul were under serious threat because of the citizens' love for eggplants. There have been several devastating big fires in history, and some of them actually started by frying eggplants. One such fire broke out in the district of Fatih Çilçe neighborhood on August 23, 1908. Rumor has it that the sole reason was a frying pan catching fire. It lasted for 2 days and nights, destroying around 1,500 houses and leaving several hundred homeless. Such instances gave much-loved vegetables a cynical annotation. The summer fires that swept out whole districts of the city were tagged as the Patlıcan Yangınları, literally the eggplant fires. Of course, the summer wind was also to blame for the spread of disaster, so the ever-present strong summer wind that fueled the fires was also tagged with the nickname of the vegetable, hence the Patlıcan Meltemi, which means eggplant season. The tight urban fabric and timber structures made residential quarters extremely vulnerable to such disasters, but people would not hold back from frying their eggplant al fresco. In the number 1 spot, we have another interesting story. The spoonmaker's diamond. The pride of the Topkapı Palace Museum and its most valuable exhibit is the 86-carat pear-shaped spoonmaker diamond, also known as a Kaşıkçı. Surrounded by a row of 49 old mine-cut diamonds, as well as spotlighted, it hangs in a glass case on the wall of one of the many rooms of the treasury. Its origins is not clear. Like many other historic diamonds, it is difficult to separate fact from fiction. Official historians of the Ottoman court describe it as In 1669, a very poor man found a pretty stone in a rubbish heap in Istanbul. He bartered it to a spoonmaker for 3 wooden spoons. The spoonmaker sold the stone to a jeweler for 10 silver coins. Of course, remember, men would carry wooden spoons, men and women, or Turks would carry wooden spoons with them during the time to eat their food. The jeweler consulted another jeweler who knew immediately that the precious stone was a diamond. When the second jeweler threatened to disclose the whole matter, the 2 men quarreled bitterly. Another jeweler heard the story and bought the diamond, giving a purse full of money to each of the angry jewelers. But now, the Grand Vizier heard the gem, and when Sultan Mehmet IV is told of the affair, he ordered the stone to be brought to the palace, and he takes possession of it. Whether he paid for it is not revealed. And of course, no one knows what history preceded it being thrown into the garbage heap. A more probable story is that in 1774, a French officer bought the diamond from the Maharaja of Madras in India and took it to France, where somehow it was stolen by thieves. Later, a large diamond matching the size of the stone arrived at auction, and the notorious Casanova made a bid for it. The diamond thus became known as the Casanova lottery diamond. Finally, it was bought by Napoleon's mother, who later sold her jewels to help her son escape from Elba in 1815. An officer named Tependeli Ali Pasha bought the great diamond for 150,000 pieces of gold and put it in Tependeli's treasury, where he was killed in a revolt. When he was killed in a revolt against Mahmud II, his entire treasury became that of the palace. It is probable the stone now called the Kashija is a long-lost Picot diamond, aka the spoonmakers. Today, the diamond still sits as display in Topkapi Palace. That's it. That's 5 interesting little stories that don't need full videos, but I thought you would like to enjoy about Ottoman history. Thank you for listening today, and if you like to hear more stories, please comment, tell me what you think, and like and subscribe, I guess. See you next time.